Today we're visiting with Kimmy Laumann, a member of Hope United Methodist Church, about her recent experience with the World Race. Kimmy just came back from 11 months on a missionary study, work group, or whatever, in 11 different countries that took her around the world. So tell us, Kimmy, how did you find out about this World Race?
Yeah, so I was graduating college, and I knew, like, back in high school, actually, God really put missions on my heart. And so I'd always been, like, seeking opportunities to do, like, a long-term or longer-term mission experience opportunity. And so when I realized I was graduating college, I was like, I still want to do this. So I Googled year-long mission trips, essentially. And this was the first thing that popped up. And I saw how expensive it was. It was about $17,000. And I was like, I don't have that kind of money. I'm not doing it. And so I started looking for other things. And things that I found was a lot of just you instead of going with a community of people. And so I would type in other word combinations, and the World Race always popped up. And I was like, okay, God, if this is where you want me to go, then I'll go. So I applied, got accepted, and told God, if this is where you want me to go, then, provide the money. So I started fundraising, and he provided it in 4 months. And then the more I talked to people, the more people were like, oh, I know my friend who's on it, or my niece, just got off of it, or like I just started, hearing about all these different people who knew people who did this, and I was like, all right, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. So honestly, it was Google, and then networking of people that I would talk to of like, okay, what do you suggest, and things like that. So
Well, tell us a little bit about who all helped you raise the money, how you did that.
oh gosh, it was. Well, I mean, coming into it, I was like, like I said, $17,000. I didn't know I was going to do it. And so I sent out some support letters, and the basis of it was I just wanted a prayer team. And then if people felt like they could give financially and wanted to be a part of it that way, I would love that. And so it was a lot of networking with family and family friends. And so I would send out the letters, call people, meet with them for coffee, and just tell them about what I felt God was calling me to do. I sold T-shirts that then ended up being complete profits because the guy that I worked with happened to be a friend who then donated the upfront cost. So that ended up being a total donation. And then I did a benefit recital that I just prepared music that I was working on in school. And people came, and I had local vendors donate things. And so people came and supported me that way. But the majority of it was just people saying, I believe in what you're doing, and I want to support you this way, and we'll be praying for you. And so it was all just networking, and people from Hope and people from the church that I was involved in down in Durango where I went to college, and just a lot of networking and just family and friends.
Well, how soon after you graduated from college, that was in June or May of 2016, 2017?
Yeah, May 2016 I graduated.
Okay.
And then
you started on this World Race when?
August 2016, so a couple months after.
And did they prepare you for what you were getting into?
Yeah, they have what's called a training camp. So it was a 10-day training camp in the state of Georgia. And so my whole squad that I can get into in a little bit, we all met there, and they go through scenarios of things you might encounter physically. So we lived in tents, and we ate the different kinds of foods from the different kind of countries, and had like an airport night where we slept in freezing cold air conditioning with the sounds of planes. So things like that, as well as they did a lot of like soul care kind of things of like, what baggage might you be taking into this mission field that we can start to work on and prepare of start praying through and start this kind of soul care. And so we talked a lot about like shame and guilt and things that may not have come up in our past or things, and it's a lot to get into, but we had a lot of talks and lots of worship and things like that really are just saying that, why are you going on the race? And the race is a term for the World Race. So why are you going on the race? And why has God called you here, and make sure you're here for the right reason and not just trying to do it to impress people or do it just for the travel, but really doing it to serve God and serve others.
Well, did you have an opportunity to opt out if at some point you decided that was not for you?
Yeah, I mean, anytime at training camp or even on the race, you could say, I am just going to go home. It was hard, though, because all that money you raised, it didn't belong to me. So if I decided to go home, I didn't get the rest of the money. It went to Adventures in Mission, which was the organization, which, you know, makes sense. They're a nonprofit, so they would get the money. So any money, you know, wouldn't go back to my supporters. So that would be one hard thing. But, you know, if you decided that it wasn't for you, then, I mean, you did. It wasn't like you were handcuffed into it.
Sure. Well, tell us about the team that you got hooked up with.
Yeah, so we were on something called the squad. So it was about 50 people that we traveled from country to country with, and they're all aged 21 to 35, so all around some of the same age. And then we would break into teams of about 7, and that's where we would split into the smaller cities when we got into the big country. And so I happened to be on 2 all-girl teams because there was lots more girls that went on the race than guys. It just happened to be that way. And so, man, my teams were my sisters. We grew so close. And so, yeah, as the big squad and as the teams, we just really pressed into each other and really got really close. And, yeah.
Well, where did you go first?
All right, so we started off in southern Africa, and we started in Lesotho, which is a landlocked country inside of South Africa. And do you want to go like country to country, kind of talk about it?
If we could.
Okay, yeah. So I was in Lesotho, and I was in the capital called Maseru, and we were working with this organization called Beautiful Dream Society, and we worked in a children's home that had children aged 7 and above. The government in Lesotho says that once a child is over the age of 7, they can't be adopted out. And they just think that people just don't want children over the age of 7, which is just so baloney. So anyways, this home takes in these older children and just creates a family. And they give them skills and helps them get on their feet once they're over the age of 18, and gives them a trade and things like that. They give them schooling, housing, house moms. It was a beautiful home. We also worked with some other schools that helps boys who are living on the street, encourages them to go back home, gives them food, picks them up wherever they are in schooling, whether they're at a 3rd grade level or an 8th grade level. They meet them where they're at. We worked with that schooling. We worked with another orphanage that has babies, newborns, through about 6-year-olds. Worked with them for a week. We worked with a little bit of human trafficking and the awareness they have in the community and things like that. So that was an amazing organization. And I'll tell one of my favorite stories from that month. At Beautiful Dream Society, we were doing the kids. There's 10 kids at that house. We were doing pedicures. We decided, it'll be fun to, wash their feet as biblical kind of reference, but also just fun to do pedicures. The boys were all on board too. They were just like, yeah, this will be fun. And one girl, her name was Newe, and she had always kept socks on her feet and shoes on her feet always. And we found out that she was taken from her family's home because they abused her and they would boil her feet as a punishment. And so she was very ashamed of her feet. And so when she found out that we were doing pedicures, she got really excited. And she threw her socks off, threw her shoes off, and she just came running when she was first in line. And we were not expecting that. We thought that she would be really ashamed of her feet like she usually was. But it was really cool to see that excitement and that joy. And it just really reminded me that this is how we're supposed to come to Jesus, just throwing everything aside and just, giving all that we have to him and saying, this is yours and not mine. I'm not going to keep it anymore. So that was probably my favorite.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, after Lesotho, you went to South Africa or to Swaziland?
No, we went to Swaziland.
Swaziland?
Yep, so Swaziland we went to, which is another landlocked country inside of South Africa. And that was a very, very, very poor country. We worked at what's called care points. And it's very similar to like what Compassion International World Vision works with. So kids will go to school if they're on sponsorship to go to school, and then they'll come to these care points in the afternoon, and they'll get discipleship, and they'll get a meal, and they'll get chances. They do like sometimes art, or they'll do choirs, and they'll have different competitions in the different kind of communities. And so we would work with them. We got to hang out with the go-go's, which are the grandmas of the community, and we got to teach a little bit of the preschool for the kids who aren't yet old enough to go to school. And so we just got to hang out a lot, but there is just, it's dusty, it's windy everywhere, and the kids just kind of feel that. They just kind of, walk, kind of slump. It's really interesting, but they're really grateful for the food they have. They cook it over huge black pots, and it's rice with like seasoning packets, and that's what they have every day, with then greens, which is just spinach that's just cooked over a fire. They eat with their hands. They don't have spoons or anything. But they always really look forward to having, the rice, because most of the families can't afford any other food. So we worked with them. We also worked with a little bit of soccer ministry, and so we ran a couple soccer camps, and the kids would come over the weekends and just, we had some soccer tournaments between the care points, so we didn't really teach much soccer. We just cheered them on.
Turn them loose.
Yeah, but that was really cool. We learned about fatherlessness. That's the country in the entire world that has the highest amount of AIDS. So there's a lot of parents who just are not there. And so kids grow up without parental units. And so they're sometimes just orphaned and just kind of living in random homes. And sometimes they're living with grandparents. And it's a really interesting culture.
Well, I didn't know you worked hard all this time, but I also saw some pictures that look like you're on a safari with some tigers and lions and elephants.
Yeah.
So you got to do some sightseeing?
Yeah, so actually in Lesotho, we got to hold lions that were 6 weeks old and 6 months old. So that was really cool. And then back in Swaziland, we went on an African safari. So we saw, charging rhinos that didn't charge. We saw just walking around one day. That was cool. Zebras, lions. So, yeah, that was really cool.
And did you go in any other countries in Africa?
Yep, and then we went to South Africa.
Okay.
And we were in a baby house or a baby orphanage, and so they had a couple newborns, and then all the way up until about 1.5. And then they'll be adopted out into, actually Canada is where that orphanage adopts out into. So we were the moms the entire time. The two ladies who run the orphanage took an entire week off. So we kind of got the swing of things the first couple weeks, and then they just left. And so we ran the whole orphanage, which is more like a foster home, I guess. But we had 10 babies, and we would feed them, we would bathe them, play with them, and we kept them all alive, so we were very happy. So we had night duty and all the good stuff.
And how many months were you in the southern part of Africa?
3 months.
You were there 3 months. And then where did you go?
After that, and we also did shark diving in South Africa.
All right.
After that, we went to Asia, and we started in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, we did what we call Ask the Lord, or just a lot more praying and just kind of looking for new ministries. And so it was a lot of networking and sitting at a restaurant and then just trying to talk to people, see if they know English, and tell them what we're doing, and I don't know, just talk to people. It's a lot of just talking.
Well, I believe I learned from your blog that it's illegal to be an evangelist or to try to recruit people for Christianity in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So what you were doing was illegal?
So technically, yes, we had to go about it in a very careful way. So we would be sitting at the park, and people would ask us, why are you here? And they always love to practice their English. So at English clubs or just in the park, they would always come to tourists and ask if they can practice English. And so they asked, why are you here? And we would say, well, Jesus asked us to come here, and then we could talk about Jesus. But there were some times that we had to be careful about it, just because if police officers were walking around, or we just had this unsettling feeling, and that I would that I could just discern was the Spirit saying, like, don't talk about this right now, then I just wouldn't. And so I would talk about something else, and then if I felt better later, I would talk about it. But it was definitely a sensing of, like, praying and saying, like, Holy Spirit, like, what, is it okay to be saying this right now, or should I wait? Because, you know, if, yes, you want to talk about Jesus, but if you get kicked out of the country, you're not helping.
Right.
So, yeah, so we also worked at a lot of English clubs and talked to people in the parks, and it was a lot of just discipleship and talking to people.
And what did you learn about talking to the Vietnamese people?
Oh, I learned, oh gosh, so much. One thing that was really interesting that relates back to our American history is we were in two different locations. One was more southern in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City, and they loved Americans. But then we went more up north in Dalat, and they would not sell us things in the market because they would say, no, you American, no sale. And that was, it was really interesting. I mean, it's been so many years, and yet they still are bitter towards Americans. So that was really interesting to experience. But
How long were you in Vietnam?
1 month.
And then where did you go?
And then we went to Cambodia. And
Which is next door.
Yep, just next door. Good old bus ride over. So we were in a really small village outside of Phnom Penh, and that's where we spent Christmas. And so we worked with actually another Christian mission base called YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And so we would teach English and help with math classes and Khmer, which is their local language, just helping kids who would come after school. They only go to school in the mornings, and then after school they don't have anything. So a lot of them would come to free more education, and this is a choice. Like, they are excited to come and continue to learn, which is a very common theme I found everywhere. Just the eagerness to learn anything. And so we would just help teach English and things like that. And they have a really cool discipleship program where it's actually the high school students teaching the classes, so we would just assist within that. So we played, soccer again in the breaks and play other hand games, and they loved this ABC hand game, and I was like, I know the ABCs, we can play that. So we also worked in the rice fields one day and helped build another dirt floor within the classroom, and yeah, and it was also, we lived on a duck farm, and so we had lots of duck and rice, so, and soup for breakfast, so yeah.
And you also got to see one of the wonders of the world at Angkor Wat.
Yep, we saw Angkor Wat at sunrise, and that was beautiful.
Tell me a little bit about that. Did you went the night before, or how did you do this?
No, so we were in Siem Reap for a leadership development weekend, and so we just woke up like 3:30 in the morning and took a tuk-tuk, which is like a motorcycle taxi kind of thing. That's all over Cambodia and Asia. And we drove down there, and you just wait outside, and there's thousands of people there too, and there's many temples within Angkor Wat. It's huge. And so we went to 3 different temples. We went to the main one, I think the second one's called Bayou, and those have tons of faces. That was my favorite. And then we went to another one that has trees just growing out of rocks everywhere. So we went to pick to like the 3 that are the most popular, I would say. So, yeah, but you have to take these tuk-tuks to the different temples because they're so spread out. Yeah, so
That's
it was
pretty
really cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
And after Cambodia, you went to Thailand.
Yes, Thailand.
Tell us about that.
Thailand. So we were in this town called Chiang Khong, which is the very tip top. Like, you could see Myanmar, Burma, and Laos just like right across the little river. So that was really cool. We worked with another organization called the Hmong Human Development Society, and they offered to the Hmong Hill Tribe saying, hey, we will give your high schoolers a better education and give them a place to live if you let them come out of the hill tribe and into the city. And so they're like, yes, better education. So they come and live in this house, and then they get exposed to Jesus, and they get a better education in more of the city. And so we worked with them and taught them English classes in the evenings, and helped in the church. And these kids love Jesus so much, and they none of them knew Jesus before they came and lived there. So that was really cool. We also taught at a primary school at a first and second grade school, taught some English classes, and I don't know if they learned any English, but we played a lot of games with them. So that was fun.
It's interesting that they all want to learn English, or that was a common denominator, that because you spoke English, they wanted to talk with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and like in all of Asia, you take your shoes off everywhere you go, and they always wear uniforms, and so we were always making sure we always forgot to take our shoes off, and like we would just walk in, and it's a sign of disrespect, so we got better at it, but yeah, so that was interesting to see, like, always uniforms, even like in preschools, always uniforms. So.
Well, and then the time you were in Southeast Asia, this is another 2 or 3 months. How long were you there?
Yep, 3 months, and we went to an elephant sanctuary when we were in Thailand. So we got to bathe the elephants and walk with them in the forest, and yeah.
And then I believe you went to Nicaragua,
Yes.
but that required you to fly through the United States and then to Central America?
Yes.
How did that feel?
Oh my goodness. It was actually, I feel like I had more culture shock flying into, we flew into LAX, and we had a 12-hour layover. I feel like I had more culture shock that day than I did when I got home after
Really?
like 11 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we came in, and my aunt lives there, and so I spent the day with my aunt, and it was a huge blessing, but I don't know, it was really odd. So it was interesting to have all these comforts that I wasn't used to for a while, and then going straight back into another, second, third world country. So, yeah, so we flew in there, we then went to Houston, and then we went to...
You had 12 hours of normal time with your aunt.
Yeah.
And then you went on to Houston and then to Nicaragua?
Yes.
And tell us what you did in Nicaragua.
So Nicaragua was kind of split into two. So the first part, we were on an island called Ometepe, and we were with another foster care program for families that really couldn't feed their children. They would send them to this foster home. And we did a lot of maintenance and cleaning around the base, and dug a trench that started level, and then we dug it by hand using shovels to be 5.5 feet to put in plumbing for a new bathroom that will be at a school. So that was fun. And then the second half of the month was actually what they called a parent vision trip. And so my parents flew out, and we spent a week and a half in I'm blanking the name now. Anyways, another city in Nicaragua, and we did all sorts of different kinds of ministry. They got to live kind of the way that we live, with no air conditioning and lots of bugs and things like that, and that was really cool. We did prison ministry. We did different kinds of like prayer walking and praying with people. We did like a feeding program at the dump, and just got to talk to people who work at the dump, and just hear about their life in different ways.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. What
Yeah.
were the people doing at the dump?
So they'll go around the city, and Granada, that's what it's called. They go around the city and collect the trash, and there are already 2 sets of people who get to pick through the trash to look for recyclables, and the recyclables are then sold back, and that's how people make a living. So people who work at the dump will then have the third pick to pick through trash to look for recyclables that they can then sell. And so whatever they collect is essentially their profits. They make about $15 to $20 a month.
Wow, right.
And that's how they live off of their money. And so we were there, and they obviously are not rich, or that's not money to live off of in anywhere part of the world. So we were just there, and I shared a message about Jesus being our amigos. Jesus is our friend, and it was from John 15, and I had just read it that morning, and our leader had said, "Hey, does anybody have a message to share?" And I knew Jesus was saying, "Yes, like this is for you to share with them." So I shared it, and they translated it, and then we shared a meal together, and yeah.
And
So-
after Nicaragua, you went to Costa Rica?
Yep, I went to Costa Rica, and we worked with an organization called Conexion, and we did a lot of field days. It was sports month in Costa Rica. So, when you think of a typical American field day, it was a lot of what we did. Parachute and trampoline and wet games and huge twister, and so that was really fun. And we stayed with an American host family, and they just loved us. The dad was a professional cook, and so we had great food that
good
month.
job.
So that was awesome. Yeah.
And your parents got to see you in Costa Rica or in
Oh,
Nicaragua?
so they were in Nicaragua, and we actually went volcano boarding, and they ended up surprising me at the bottom of the Sierra Negro. So they had gone volcano boarding down, which is what it sounds like, just going like a piece of wood going down a volcano, just like you're snowboarding or something.
And you didn't know they were there?
No, I knew they were going, but they were supposed to be going like 3 hours before we were supposed to be going. But they ended up kind of getting delayed, and then they talked to their tour guide, and they waited. They were with a couple other racer parents, and so they all waited about an extra hour, and then surprises at the bottom of the volcano after. So it's a sweet reunion after like 7 months. So.
And how long did you get to stay and visit with your folks?
We actually ended up being able to go have lunch together before we went one way and they went the other way, and then we saw again the next day. So yeah, so it was so great. It was so fun.
Well, after Costa Rica, then went on to Jamaica.
Yes.
All right.
So then we went to Jamaica, which another layover in the States, but it wasn't as long. We flew through the States plenty of times. So we went to Jamaica. We were in Port Moore, which is just outside of Kingston. And we were working with a local church, and that's where we spent Easter. And we did some construction that, like helping, it just gets really muddy outside, so we were helping to put in more cement. And we also worked in their preschool. So I was in the 4-year-old classroom and just read to them and played with them at recess, like what you would do in a preschool. Just that was very similar. So that was really fun that month, and yeah.
And after Jamaica?
After Jamaica was Haiti. Oh, I love Haiti.
And you had been to Haiti on a mission trip before?
Yes, so I was in Haiti actually like right after I graduated college, so right before I left for the race. And we were in Maui, Haiti, and we did a lot of different things. We did Bible clubs, which were like kind of Bible studies or VBS type things for kids. We did a couple of those. We went to a special needs orphanage. We went to a normal orphanage and would just hang out with the kids and play games. We did like evangelism or street care and just talk to people about, do you believe in Jesus? What your relationship looks like? Things like that. And also like what are your needs in life? Like, can we help you with anything? Can we help you with housework? And we would talk to elderly in the neighborhood, and we gave one a bath, and just prayed for them, gave one lady a medicine. There's a older folks home that we just went and would just dance and sing hymns, and we would know them in English and they would know them in Creole, and so we would just sing them together at the same time, which is beautiful. So we do just like really fun and just life-giving things.
And I believe you may have additional plans to go back to Haiti?
Yeah, I'm really excited. In the end of, I guess the week before Christmas, I'll be going back with actually the same organization to the same area, and there's people that I've talked to that I'm hoping to like do kind of follow-ups with, that like I'm like one girl gave her life to Christ that I'm hoping that I can talk to our translator, that we can go back and I can be like, hey, how is it going, and things like that. So I'm really, really excited to go back.
Good. And then to the Dominican Republic?
Yep, so the Dominican Republic was our last country, and we lived in the beautiful mountains in a town called La Has, and oh my goodness, they were just stunning. The back porch was just so peaceful, and it was an amazing time to just process the whole year, and just what was coming up next and what God was doing and such. So honestly, that month we didn't have a ton of ministry, but we had so much time to just reflect and spend time with God, and that was great. So.
Well, in reading your blog, I understand that you had some goals going into this. One was to work with local groups that were already established and were working in those communities. Then to live in those communities as though that was part of your life, and then finally to grow in your relationship with God. Do you feel like you met those goals?
Yeah, I really do. Some months we lived like in a tent in the backyard of the host home. Some months we lived in the bedroom next door to our host home, or literally with the family. We ate with the family. We had local cooks, and so living with the locals was an amazing opportunity. Yes, I missed American food, I will say that, but I would not trade that for anything. And there were so many opportunities where there were times, like for instance, in Cambodia, there was a bag that we could put dirt inside, and we could have done, hauling dirt 10 times faster, but they put the dirt on top, and then 2 people carry the bag. Now, for us to put the dirt inside, we felt would have been coming above somebody, and so we would say, oh, this is how you want us to do it? Okay, we will do it like this. We want to come alongside people. So we learned, the ups and downs at points of saying, okay, yes, we'll come alongside you and do it how you would like us to do it, instead of saying, this is how we're going to do it because this is more efficient. So, yeah.
And in your spiritual life, do you felt like you grew?
Oh my goodness. I literally feel like a different person. I came into the race with this attitude of, I'm this perfect Christian. I grew up in church. Like, I haven't had any of these big bad sins. Like, I'm fine. And God just wrecked me. He showed me what was poverty and showing me what was joy and all these things through the mission, through the people we worked with, but also just showing me, man, I had so much pride and I needed so much humility and things like that he gave me so much freedom from perfection and freedom from not having to, do things just because I've always done them, but saying, like, why do you do things? But it's because God loves me, and, like, that's motivation. Like, love God and love people. Like, that is so simple. So, yeah.
Well, I know from reading your blog that you also used your music talents in all of your different relationships. Tell us a little bit about that during the race.
Yeah, so I used them there was a couple ways. So one of them was in a couple different opportunities in different organizations. We met the band teacher in Thailand. He happened to go to our church, and he said, oh, you can come teach music. So me and one of our other teammates went and taught band for a couple days, and I taught violin, private lessons to a girl, which I don't really play violin. Actually, I don't play violin at all, but I took a class in it in school, so that was cool. And then I also was the worship coordinator for a whole squad. So about once a month, I would check in with all the different teams and say, hey, how's worship going? Do you need any resources? What is worship, really to our squad? And then I would organize about 4 teams to lead during our debriefs and during different weekends that our whole squad would be together, and I got to help lead too, so it was great.
Well, I also learned from your experience here and talking at the church, and also from your blog, that you had what I would call an uncomfortable experience with the red light district in Thailand, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was definitely one of the days that really just opened my eyes. So we were in groups of about 3, and we went down to the red light district, and we're just praying that, saying, God, like, whatever you want us to do here tonight, like, let that happen. And so some of us were able to buy some of the time of the prostitute, and they just went up and they sung karaoke and had snacks and just had a really great time and said, hey, you're worth more than what you think you are. My group just went and talked to some of the pimps, some of the prostitutes, and just got to really talk to them, but they wouldn't let us actually buy their time because they knew that we were not after what they wanted. And then some people just walked around and just prayed silently and didn't really talk to anybody, but I know, God puts different things on people's hearts. And that was definitely a night that just, opened my eyes to realize this happens everywhere in the world. This happens, unfortunately, in Denver. This happens all over the U.S. and all over the world, we mentioned. And it was really hard to be there, but then I realized I can talk to these people like they're human. They are human, and some of them, yes, are forced into it, and some of them feel like this is the only way they can pay for their families. This is where they're paying for their university, or that they're paying for their family, and they feel so trapped. So it was hard, but it was, it still doesn't make sense.
I think it would be very hard, but I think it's also a benefit that you gave them some recognition, acknowledgement as a human being, and that somebody loves them instead of being caught in these terrible circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, my hat's off to you. That's a tough mission, in my opinion.
Yeah, God still teaches me that within, especially talking to people, panhandlers and people who are homeless. Like, I don't know their story, but they're still humans, and God reminds me that all the time. Like, just go talk to them. Ask, what's their name? They have a name. Yeah.
Well, tell me maybe the worst experience that you had, something you ate, somewhere you had to sleep, the job that you had. What was the worst experience you had?
Oh gosh, okay, in Cambodia, we had one bull. We call it the community bull. And this bull was the same bull that was used that the ducks would eat out of, that they would slaughter the ducks, having the blood everywhere, and then we would wash our dishes in it. And there was no bleach. We had some soap, but the store would run out of it, so sometimes we ran out of it too. And yet we are all alive and nobody got sick. So that was terrifying. But yeah, that would probably be one of the
It's a bit of a shock
crazy.
to a middle-class suburban child from growing up in the Denver area.
Yeah, very true. So,
Well, tell me maybe what's the best experience you had?
oh boy, that's a really hard question. I remember back in Lesotho, like month one, we were at the children's home, and I would play this game with this boy named Taboho, who I just fell in love with. He's 8 years old, and but he is a little younger of a mind, and he would play this game we call Monkey, and he would say, "Look, monkey in the tree," and I would say, "Where?" And I'd turn around, and he would just run. And I remember one day we were playing it, and it hit me, like, this is joy. Like, just so pure and thoughtless, and I just remember, like, this is how I want to live my life. Like, I don't want to be tied down with, like, feeling like I have so much stuff all the time. And so, I don't know, I just remember, like, there's so many of those moments that just hit me of, like, I don't know, just God's like, it's just pure, and it's simple, and it's good. So, joy, yeah.
Well, would you change anything about your year's experience with the race?
Oh boy. One thing, I mean, this is so simple, but I never got a fish pedicure in Asia because I was like, oh, I'll get it in Bangkok, and then I missed it. But I think I would just, like, seize the moment. There were times that I was like, oh, this massage, it's $5. Like, I can't spend that, but it's like, I'm in Asia. When am I going to be in Asia again? So, and that's something I've really kind of tried to take home is that seize the moment. Like, yes, be conscious of your money, be conscious of your time, but seize the moment.
Yep. That's a good attitude. Well, tell me how this has changed your life.
We talked on the race about living missionally. And just that thought that, everywhere you go, God's working, like seeking where is he working and, where does he want us to reach out every day. It can be something simple of like helping out your roommate or helping out your wife or parents or whatever. Or it can be like, go talk to that homeless person or go talk to this person. And sometimes it's just talking or maybe it's buying them a meal. And so that's really has been a huge change of, every day I try to wake up and say, okay, God, how do you want to use me? Or God, what do you want me to know today? And sometimes it's something simple of like, just know that you're loved. Or sometimes it's go buy somebody a meal. Or I don't know, it's been something different all the time. And so, so it's really been that concept of living missionally. Like, life is not about me, but it's about God and serving him and serving it through other people. So I've been really trying to live that out, but gosh darn, it's hard sometimes.
Yes. Well, we've talked about a lot of different things. Have we overlooked something that you want to say about your trip?
Oh boy. I don't know. It was amazing, and
It sounds like an amazing experience. Well, tell me what your plans are now.
well, I have really learned another thing from the race is that, like, I just want to live with my hands open, like, palms up to God and say, whatever you have for me, like, this is how I want to live. I don't want to live asking for the next 12 steps, but just, God, whatever it is, like, show me one step, just so I know. And so I feel like I am discerning my future, and so I am still feeling called into full-time ministry. Right now, I feel like he's put a huge desire and a huge excitement for church planting, and so whether that means planting a traditional church or something totally different that, is just pulling people to Jesus, I just want to tell people about Jesus. So I'm looking at seminaries and seminaries. I don't know what else, but so right now I'm applying and looking at that. So
That's terrific. Well, Kimmy, thank you for being the hands and feet of Christ representing this church as you went around the world, and thank you for sharing your story with us today.
yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.